Welcome to Salcedo Paranormal. It is Sunday, August 28th, 2022, and tonight I'll be sharing true paranormal stories from the web. As always, you can find all the episodes of the podcast along with links to social media, ways to donate, and ways to contact me at the podcast page, which is salcedoparanormal.podbean.com. That's SALSIDO paranormal.podbean.com. Always happy to hear from you all, whether you have comments or questions or topic suggestions, or if you have stories of paranormal experiences, whether they're your own or from others that you trust. Happy to either read them or have you join me on the show to talk about them. And that can be arranged for just about any time or day, even if it doesn't fit with the usual schedule, which of course is 8 p.m. Eastern every Sunday through Thursday now. That's the new schedule. So, this coming week, the plan is tomorrow night will be paranormal news. Tuesday will be more true paranormal stories from the web. Probably a little bit shorter of a version of a show than tonight. And then Wednesday, we'll be getting into a new series of ancient afterlife mythology and beliefs and possibilities of it being based on experiences people had in the ancient world on a planet with maybe a stronger or at least a different electromagnetic field. So we'll be getting into that Wednesday. And then Thursday will be more paranormal news. So, and that's the plan for this week. And I believe that covers everything. I'm very happy again to have a returning guest joining me tonight. And Jen, welcome to the show again. I'm not hearing anything. I think everything's good on my end, but it could be a issue. I don't see anything. Okay, we'll give Jen a moment here. I think she's going to restart and then rejoin, and then we'll begin. And no worries there. Tech issues happen all the time. So, and I see that you're back. And I don't hear anything. So, let me check. Okay, nothing there. All right. So, no worries. This is, again, tech issues happen to everyone. So, but thank you all for listening, whether you're here for the live shows or the you listen to the podcast or YouTube feeds. Always happy to have you all listening. So let's see this. Oops. Okay. What I think I will do is I will start reading the story because I did send these stories to Jen before. So I'm going to start reading the first story, and in a moment here, and then we can go from there. Oops, there we go. Hello.
Thank goodness. Hey, James, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you for joining me, and I'm glad that we were able to get that going. So
Yeah, I disconnected, reconnected. I'm glad to be here. I'm looking forward to hearing these stories. Sorry about that little delay there.
no worries. Like I said, it's technology. You never know when it's going to work or not. So no problem there. But
well, I can't wait to hear it. I'll mute up and let you tell the articles.
Okay. All right. Well, then I will get started here. So this first one says, now some of these stories tonight are a bit short, so that's why we have so many of them this time. So here we go with the first one. Again, this is one of the shorter ones. This one says, okay, so I live in the woods around the Carolinas. I'm just playing soccer outside. It is just me and my dog, and I suddenly hear music. No idea where it came from, but it started off like wind chimes. It sounded like there were multiple, but then it got creepier. I was tempted to follow it, but I did not know what it was. I was freaked out and went back to my house. I came out again a few hours later, and I could still hear it. It was quieter this time, but I could still hear it. I am now just totally freaked out. And that's where that ends. So, quite the encounter there, and that's the woods are something that come up a couple times in this episode tonight, which I thought that was interesting.
Yes, it sounds like something like it makes you think of like a fairy encounter or something. It's really romantic to imagine, to be out in the woods and then you hear like that kind of, a tinkling sound as if like wind chimes. I bet it was actually very pretty. I wish, I would love to hear something like that. But then the idea that it got kind of, as they described it, a little creepy. I wonder if they mean like the tone of the music got creepy, or if it just got creepy to be hearing music and not know where it's coming from. But then the aspect of the paranormal stuff too, I've heard of people hearing like piano playing and things like that. But it makes me think of maybe, that they're picking up on some, maybe from the forest, ancient, I don't know, either the ghosts of the people who used to live in the wilds in that forest, or if it was something like the elementals or the fairy folk trying to like get them to come into the woods. I don't know. That's a really cool story.
Yeah, it is. And the first thing I went to was some kind of a nature beings, nature spirits, elemental. Just because wind chimes, you're not going to have those just. Usually, you're not going to have those just set up out there in the middle of the woods. Um,
Right.
and then, yeah, I also wonder about that. If the creepier part, if it what they mean by that exactly. If they mean it was more like negative tones, minor tones, I can see that getting or the tones going slightly off key. I could see that
Mm-hmm.
being creepier.
That would be creepy.
Yeah, but it's hard to judge what they meant exactly with that. But
I kind of imagine that the music got creepy. That it's like, but it
yeah,
sounds like something out of a book or a movie. But yeah, I wonder if they'd had any other types of encounters or any other signs that it might have been elementals, or if it was just a paranormal event. Like either way, it's a paranormal event. But if it was, um, the music of spirits, otherwise, like maybe human spirits playing like the memory of the music from some, time in the past. But that's just very neat. I love stories like that where it deals with the woods.
yeah, and I think if you just a lot of people when they think of the woods, they think of it as being um just a positive place or just a place where there's nothing out there except maybe wildlife. But there's plenty of stories out there. If you look hard enough, you can find all kinds of weird things that happen in the woods.
Oh, for sure. Some of them very scary. I think it's even scarier sometimes to imagine because when you're out in the desolation of a forest, especially if it's not like a place where people go hiking or anything like that, maybe like a private piece of forest, there is kind of an eerie feeling where it starts to feel like you're being watched by something. So I've felt that sensation before where it feels like something's observing you, but you don't see anything. And then you have those moments too where there's complete silence. But if I were to hear music out there, I would immediately think of possibly the stories we hear about coming out of folklore of the fairy folk and stuff. And so I wonder if it's something like that. But that's a really cool story.
Yeah, I thought so too, and to have that happen right here in the U.S. as well. Um, you don't get a ton of stories like that out of the U.S. At least not so easily.
It does
Uh,
sound like something you hear more like in Europe for sure, but
yeah,
or Ireland or something. But still, I'm happy to
yep.
hear that we may have such things going on. And I've heard that they came over on the boat. Have you ever heard that before? But they could also
No.
have been here already. The elementals might have come on the boats and maybe even come with the stories. So I don't know. It depends on how, like you think about it, but it's really
Yeah,
cool.
if they can be invisible and or shift between dimensions or levels of reality, then they could have been on the boats and no one maybe even would have noticed. Um, and especially if we go back to the idea that these are they're 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 smaller, physically smaller as far as stature and shape and size creatures, then they could have hidden away in just one corner of a boat, I would think. And
Some
even
of
if
them.
they could be seen, they could have made it over.
Yeah, it's hard
So,
to say because some of those they can't cross the water, but in other cases they live in it, and in other cases they inhabit and stay with people specifically. So I've heard different accounts of these, like what elementals will do, but in the idea of just nature spirits, I would think that you would have like the same type of, probably by a different name, in any forested location, I guess. And I think a lot of people have had, um, I don't know, maybe not the type of fairy you hear out of Europe, but some type of fairy that's in the Americas, even South and North America. But I love stories like that.
yeah, that's really amazing. It's kind of ironic in a way that I found that story because I was thinking I'd be tempted to go and check it out, which is
Mhm.
ironic given
See if you
an
hear it.
experience I had last night with
Yes.
the light, and I was literally thinking basically at this light that I'd seen about a month ago before that I was okay with it visiting me, and of course I mentioned that on Discord, and not
Hmm.
everyone was not quite so pleased that I had thought that,
Oh, it was
but
fun. It was fun to talk about it.
yeah. So, but then I found this story today, so um. Well, anyway, yeah. Well, I will go on to this next story here. This is another short one.
Okay. Mhm.
So this one says, "This morning my wife and I heard a sort of a whisper in our ears, a male voice saying, 'Hello.' Imagine someone saying it from far away, but it was whispered. What was odd is I first thought it just me dreaming, but my wife asked if I heard that voice. I immediately woke up and searched the house and looked outside, thinking maybe it came from outside. Super odd. We aren't sure what to make of it." And again, there's another story of sounds. This time, though, in a home. So, but two people hearing it.
Yeah. Well, this is really weird because I've had an experience like that before. And what it was I was laying in bed and I don't have anybody else that was there also, but I was just beginning to get comfortable and that kind of thing. And the room I remember that the room felt like it was darker than it usually was. It may have been that the moon was a new moon or something, or something to that effect. But the room was very dark and there was a stillness I felt kind of. And I heard like a whisper, and it was like right over my head, say Audie. And it whispered it, and I was like, I didn't sit up. I just opened my eyes and but I swear that I heard it just right there. I've never had it happen before or after that. But actually, as it is, my great grandfather Duncan, that was his given name was Audie Duncan. And I thought that was so strange, but there was no reason for it to happen, no connection there whatsoever, and I wasn't thinking of it. But people, I think they're in a relaxed state, and I do think that there are, especially in that state where you're kind of relaxed and getting ready to go to sleep, that they do. That's when people, will see. But then the hearing thing, I think, seems rare because I don't hear. I mean, it's not uncommon. I'm not saying that, but I mean, I don't hear as many stories where it's just like one word or one like the whispering thing, but it sounds far away. But I think that's I don't know. It's a classic thing that people experience with haunting. But what's really strange is sometimes it's not accompanied by any other activity. So it's just something getting their attention for some reason while they're trying to go to sleep. So very cool story.
Yeah. I sometimes wonder if it's maybe easier when they are when people are either going to or coming out of sleep for that kind of stuff to happen. Those kind of that kind of connection to be made, maybe.
Ooh,
Um,
I wonder
so
if
yeah,
it's always happening. Like if it's always happening and or not all the time, but happening more frequent than you would think, where the spirit is trying to like reach out and they wait for a moment when the person's in a or maybe they're not waiting for the moment. Maybe they're just at that moment when you're really relaxed, the spirit is then audible to the person somehow or something.
yeah. I feel like I've heard that before. That idea suggested before from other stories. So there could be something to that. Yeah. But that name that you heard, that is amazing. That's not just a hello or a random thing that can be any number of words.
No, it's just that one word. And it just said like that. It was like but really clear.
Right.
Like but it was definitely in a whisper, but it was just like they were almost straining to make the sound, but I heard it crystal clear and in the room. Like I didn't hear it it wasn't like I like you might hear something in your mind. I heard it the same way if somebody had like closed the window or if somebody was in there talking to me. I heard it that very clearly. But nothing happened. I was scared. I did get up and I went and slept in the living room. And because it startled me a little bit because I wasn't sure, and I
Right.
didn't have a reference for the name at all at the moment. I wasn't thinking, of it until like a couple of days later. I talked to my mom about it, and she was like, "Oh, that's weird because Adi, that's your great grandfather's name." And I was like, "Oh, that's very
So
strange."
you didn't even know at that point? I
I
remember.
hadn't, well, I hadn't thought of it. I had heard,
Okay.
years because it was just Grandpa Adi. I'm
Right.
sorry,
Okay.
Duncan, and so
Oh.
I hadn't
Wow.
drawn the connection. It was just so yeah. I mean, I'm sure I had heard it at some point where they mentioned him by his first name, but of course, you know what I mean.
Yeah. That's not something you would have. Yeah. Huh.
Yeah,
Wow.
I
Well,
don't know.
thank you for sharing that. I don't. That is amazing. But yeah. No, there's something to the. I think voices. Sometimes I wonder if it's easier for voices to come through as well than entire visual apparitions.
Ooh,
Um.
I would
Yeah.
think, yeah, that could be.
So. Huh. Okay. Well. Uh. I'll go on to this next one here. And this one says, my Nana and I were sitting at her kitchen table, talking, when the chair opposite from us slid across the room by itself. We were the only people in the house at the time. No explanation for why it did that. The floor is completely flat, and no one was near the chair, or even in the house with us at this time. We were speechless for a few minutes, and we had to go outside for a bit. It's so weird. We both watched it slide back a few feet from the table and stop in the middle of the room, like someone had just gotten up from the chair. The house dates back to the 1600s, and it has UK, so United Kingdom in parentheses. And my Nana and a few other family members have had other strange experiences while living there, but none as weird as that as far as I know. Apparently, the house is only haunted for one half months 1/2 months, but normal for the rest of the year. I'm not sure what they mean by that. But that's the end of that story. But 1600s, that's going back
Yeah,
a little ways.
you hardly ever. The oldest house I've ever been in the United States, I think, was like the mid 1700s. Was like the oldest house I've ever been in, not lived in, but visited. And but in Europe, in UK, of course, you're going to have these extremely old properties. Some of them, well, I mean, we have ancient places, but actual houses that actually date back that far. It's just so uncommon. And then you wonder, like, with the house itself, of course it must be. And I think it's strange that they're saying it, if they are insinuating that it's only haunted some of the time, that's really bizarre. And then I wonder if it's the table, if because the furniture sometimes, if it's an antique furniture or something like that. But in this case, I don't think it would matter one way or the other. But It does sound like a spirit either got up or you have the poltergeist thing, right? It makes me think of of the accounts I've seen with the Warrens, when they've been doing investigations where a whole table will move, and I've heard about with the Enfield case, very famous cases, but all the same, where they experience furniture just sliding across the floor or levitating off the floor, things like refrigerators even. So I don't know, either it was a spirit, yeah, getting up from the table, I guess. It could be anything, but maybe it was a spirit getting up from the table, or maybe it was like some kind of, force up below the ground, or the table itself was haunted, or what if the table only is haunted, but they say that it happens, so often out of the year, which I think that's what they mean. But very cool story. I love stories about objects being manipulated.
Yeah, I wonder if it's someone or some being that comes and goes that just is only in the place at certain times.
Hmm.
Because I kind of had that in my apartment here with my bedroom closet,
Oh, that's right.
and where it was there at night, but not I didn't ever felt whatever this was there in the daytime. And then
Mhm.
eventually it just left completely. It doesn't hang out in that closet anymore. So I wonder if there's something like to do with that, where someone is just using this house as a temporary or part time home,
Mhm.
and when they're there, there's activity. Maybe even whether they mean to or not, there could be activity. I don't think all the time when these things happen. I think that you never. It's hard to always say whether it's intentional or not, and so it could be that kind of situation.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if they even knew that they were like if it was a ghost or a spirit, if it was getting up from the table, I wonder if it was aware that they were sitting there. Because sometimes you wonder if they're going on a parallel timeline where they're just kind of doing their thing and we happen to witness it, or if it was a spirit, if it was aware that they were there and was intentionally, I mean, knowing that if it. But see, that's interesting too, that people talk about ghosts just walking right through them or them just moving through walls, but then when they're able to affect the physical, material objects and move them, now that's just something else. I've heard it's ectoplasm or something that they use or something to that effect, but I don't know, because that's very puzzling how they do manipulate objects, though they can move through objects, or if they are aware that the people are there, or not, or if they're doing it to get their attention, or if it was an accident. And then in your case, where it only happens so often, like they're just passing through and stop there, or it's on the way through maybe like some type of, you know, where they're, I don't know how they travel, but yeah, that is fascinating.
Yeah, it is. It makes me think of the other time with the one other case where I think there was an older couple that they were just passing through this area, and for some reason, all that was coming through was their voices, and I heard them as though they were walking. But I didn't hear footsteps, but I heard them as if they were just having a conversation as they were walking through my apartment, and it was like they didn't even know that they were in an apartment. Like didn't even know that they were here, or that I was hearing them.
Oh,
Or even that it was an apartment. I feel like because they didn't sound. There was nothing negative about any of it. I feel like maybe where they were at, there was not an apartment, or maybe it was empty.
hmm.
But even the way they walked or they moved, it wasn't like it didn't follow the path of the doors to the apartment. It just was. It was like at a direct, as the saying goes, as the crow flies, direct straight line.
Wow.
And I just tracked it the whole way. I was watching, and I just heard this couple talking like they were having a pleasant conversation, and they were heading right towards a power junction box that's out in the backyard. It's built into the ground, and then
Hmm.
of course beyond that is a nursing home.
Whoa.
So I'm just wondering where they're going to visit someone,
I
or
don't know.
if you want
But
to, you know, not, and I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, but if they were going to meet someone there that was going to be transitioning, I mean,
right. No, I've heard a lot of things about nursing homes, and a lot of times these nursing homes they'll have like a cat that can detect when someone's getting ready to pass and things like that. I've heard all kinds of neat stories out of nursing homes. And then, but yeah, so if since you're kind of maybe they were on their way to go, see somebody along, and weren't even where they were at. They don't see an apartment and they don't see anyone, or maybe they do see someone, but they don't see an apartment. They may just see the light of you or something like that. But that's very cool that you were able to like track the sounds, without absolutely that's and I can kind of envision like or imagine that. Very neat.
Yeah. It was amazing because there was nothing scary about it. It was just like
Yeah,
there's people walking through. Yeah.
very
Yeah.
neat.
So it's funny how that worked. I don't know. But yeah, so well, I'll go on to this next story here. We're about halfway done with these stories. Got 3 more left. This one says, when I was 15 or so, me and my group of friends all slept over at the leader of our friend group's house. This guy lived in the most absolutely rural area of our rural town, basically in the middle of the woods. A house just absolutely surrounded by thick walls of trees. In the evening, we decided to go out and start a bonfire deep in his woods. So we packed up, got all our materials, and went straight out into the woods. On the way to the spot we'd be making our campfire at, he told us about how messed up and creepy his woods are, and the numerous things he has seen. While, not while, white, skinny figures peeking around his shed, staring at him and running off when he looked at them, screaming in whispers from the woods, figures watching him, all that good stuff. It set the mood pretty well. By around 7 at night, we had the campfire set up, and it was pitch black outside, as it was the middle of winter in New Hampshire. Oh, wow. They're out there doing this in the middle of winter. Jeez. Says, I can still remember how creepy the whole vibe was that night. You could not see a single thing besides the ring of light coming out from the fire. Everything else was just a black wall of nothingness. And the sound of the forest was so quiet that it was almost deafeningly loud if we didn't talk. We ended up needing more firewood, or whatever we were using for the campfire, so the leader takes me with him to go get it. Without a flashlight or any light source, me and him walked the 1.5 mile long trail back to his house in complete and utter darkness. It was all good. We were talking, joking with each other, having a good time, just hanging out, when the first noises started. He immediately made me stop talking. To my left and my right was a bunch of different sounds. Screaming, laughing, talking and whispering, shouting, people saying inaudible words. It sounded like there was something around 20 people around us. The natural night vision had set in a decent amount, and I looked over at my friend, who had his head down and did not say a single word. Known for being a complete goofball and a wild, funny guy, I had never seen him look so shaken and serious in my life. He had this look to him that still kind of haunts me to this day, as we knew him, and he portrayed himself as the fearless leader type of our group. And seeing him so shaken up and afraid was really unsettling. I started to say something along the lines of, "What the heck is that?" before he cut me off and told me to be quiet, face forward, and to not pay attention to any of the sounds. I did what he said, and the next 3 or so minutes was uncomfortable and terrifying. I remember feeling sick to my stomach. By the time we reached his house, the sounds had stopped, and we both grabbed what we needed to grab in silence. That's when I could really listen to the sheer quietness of that night. No birds, no sticks falling, no sound. Absurdly silent. We walked back to the campfire, and nothing else occurred that night. Still, my most unsettling and bizarre experience that I have almost no explanation of. This could be a paranormal experience, although I'm not sure. Too long didn't read, it says. Me and my friends started a bonfire in my friend's sketchy woods. When me and the group leader went back to his house to grab firewood, we heard the sounds of 20 plus people talking, screaming, hollering, and laughing in the woods. And that's where it ends.
Wow. That's extremely weird. And I can't believe they went back. You know, like I would have been terrified. I would have run. You know, and the other thing, it all the way to the house, you know, because I mean, it would just, I can't believe they stayed so calm as they were hearing it, especially having the, you know, the backstory kind of about him having seen these figures and heard these things. I can't believe that they made it through. I wonder what would have happened if they had looked off to the side. I don't know if he did or if he just kept forward too. And then to go all the way back to the house, oh, that distance, that's quite a distance, and then go back. Well, that's just extremely bold. But then, you know, curiosity perhaps. But then to imagine too, this man who's living out in the woods and he just, in spite of these experiences, wants to go out in the woods and light this fire to begin with in the middle of the winter. I wonder what bid him, like, what, you know, would possess him to want to do that even. I wonder if there's something to that even, that he was under some type of spell or like influence in a way to go out into the woods and to, you know, go out into the woods, light a fire, and then, you know, be party to this experience for whatever reason. And I don't know what the purpose would be except to show themselves or to interact, but there could be a lot more going on than we're even realizing with this kind of story. But what he's describing with these figures, like these thin white figures, I've heard of things like that before in the woods around where I lived, and also too with the sounds. People will report hearing. Oop,
Oop. Oops.
is that okay?
Yeah, I think we're good. Sorry.
I heard a story from my neighbor that they would hear this almost like sing-songy sound, like not like a bird, and it'd be in the middle of the night, but it would like a chortling singing sound that was like not like any of the animals. I mean, most people would think it's animals, but in the Ozarks, people are very familiar with the type of wildlife in the area. And this was an older man, and he told me that he would hear it come like follow him when he was going around his property at night doing things like, you know, wood or taking trash out or moving an animal or doing things like that, that he would hear it kind of come and go. Once again, you have all kinds of unknowns when you think about the forest, and especially this idea of all of the most ancient things to do to go build a bonfire in the middle of winter, which is very, I wonder if it was around a certain holiday even, because you have those strange fire holidays in the winter that go back to, you know, ancient times. I wonder if there was any type of, you know, who knows, but I can't believe they went back in spite of how scary that must have been, honestly.
Yeah, I wonder if maybe that guy, that leader of that group, was maybe kind of observing some kind of holidays or rituals, and but not necessarily like telling everyone that he was doing
Right.
that.
Maybe not letting them in on it, but hey, we're gonna go
Yeah,
out in the woods and light this giant fire, or at least just a fire and a bonfire, and we're gonna well, you'd have to bring the wood from the house because everything out there would be wet or frozen. So of course they had to go back to the house. But on the way, you can hear all this, I dare say, like merriment, very creepy merriment of you know, a cacophony of voices or something, screaming. That's just wow. I would be out of my skin, you know, like seriously, and just I can't believe that he went back. I wonder if they talked about it before they even left. Like, I would have been like, dude, I don't think I'm going back, to the fire. But
I,
oh my god,
yeah, I think if they didn't have friends back there at the fire, I would have definitely
yeah,
been like, I'm not going back out there.
I
I'm
don't
done.
think I will. Just in case something, if it because, and I'm surprised too that there was nothing. He didn't say that much happened on the way back to the fire. But there was somebody left. I mean, I wonder how many people were left back at the fire, and what if anything happened with them. It just sounds like there was definitely something going on in those woods, and it sounds also too like the man knew about it, the leader, and then making the fire out there intentionally a mile and a half out in the woods away from his house. Why not just do it kind of in the backyardish area? I wonder if that spot was significant in some way too. You know, where he
Yeah,
knew they would be fighting or something. Really
yeah.
weird.
And I wonder too. I feel like I would hope that if if anything had happened, I wonder if maybe nothing would have happened to the people back at the fire because it was somehow focused on that guy, the leader guy, because he
Oh yeah,
was the
like the
one
Pied
kind of
Piper,
setting everything up.
right? That he was doing what they were. Maybe I don't know. It's hard to say because he could have been privy to it, or he could have been acting unawares. Not like possession per se, but like, he just has the suggested idea almost of like, it'd be great to do is go build a giant fire out in the woods about a mile away from the house and bring my friends out here in the middle of the night and, just see what happens. I mean, like, it's just kind of strange. So he could have even just be going by suggestion alone, or like you said, that he was knowingly participating in some type of something, an experiment or a ritual of some type or a celebration that they were not aware of or something, you know. But that's really, especially the description of the figures too, just like pale, skinny figures out in the woods. That's very eek, you know.
Yeah, and the
Yeah,
suggestion idea too is amazing because I feel like I've heard of that as well. People, I don't know why I wanted to do this, whatever this is.
yeah, like
But
that.
I just felt like going out to do this or going here to do that, and then something weird happens.
Yes,
And
not exactly possession, but like just kind
right,
of not at all. Just kind of like, I think I'll do this because it's like a like suggestion or somebody, they can't. It's not audible, but there might be something kind of whispering to them or something. I don't
yeah,
know.
huh, yeah. No, I thought that was an amazing story. Yeah, not something I want to deal with in person,
No,
but
yeah, definitely. I would have been terrified. Great
yeah,
story.
yeah. Okay, well, I'll get started on this next one. I think this next one is probably the longest one out of the whole thing. So here we go. This one says, so this happened in 2013 when I was 18 years old. It was sometime in the summer. I've forgotten exactly when, but that isn't really relevant. My friend, her boyfriend, and several of his friends were going to camp out for a couple nights in a city in town in Oklahoma. They invited me and my boyfriend at the time to join them. Everything had been great. We had a typical summer camping experience with lots of swimming, hiking, and arguing over correctly setting up the tents during the day. Nighttime comes around, and earlier in the evening, we befriend some people camping near us and invite them over. We have a nice fire going, and we are all just sitting around talking with our new friends and a bottle of, I'm guessing rum, Bacardi. Around midnight, we all start to get a little restless with our campsite. Our new friends tell us we should drive out to a cliff that overlooks the town. The moon was super bright that night, and we all thought that was a great idea. Kids, don't go hiking in the middle of the night. It's super dangerous. That's what the story says, which I agree with. And it says also don't drink if you're underage. And there we go. That's good too. It says, I mean, you will anyway, but as a responsible adult, I have to say that. And I agree with them. Anyway. And it says, anyway, 9 of us pile into my friend's boyfriend's truck. 6 of us in the back of the bed of the truck, 3 in the cab. By the way, her boyfriend didn't drink, so he was definitely okay to drive. And another point I'd like to make is that I had only one drink this night. And at the point of our excursion, it had been a couple of hours since I'd had it. So I definitely wasn't intoxicated, and certainly not intoxicated enough to hallucinate what I saw. So where we were was a very dark rural road. Those are 2 hard words to say right after each other. Headed up to this cliff area. There are a few houses up this way, but at the time, it was pretty desolate. There were also no cars except for us on this road at this time. My friend, my boyfriend, and myself were sitting on the driver's side, out in the back of the truck. So we are outside enjoying the breeze. We come up to a spot on the road where we are passing a home. Again, there are some houses out here, but not a ton, and it's not a residential area. It's rural, so no streetlights. As we pass this house, I see a girl standing next to the mailbox at the end of the driveway. She's barefoot, dirty blonde hair that's just past her shoulders, light blue sundress with what appeared to be a flower print, and she's just standing there motionless and facing the road. Her face was completely expressionless. I may have thought she was a mannequin had she not turned just her head and held my gaze as we drove by, and kept staring until we were out of sight of each other. I instantly had chills, head to toe, and felt incredibly uneasy. She looked to be a teenager herself, or a very young adult. She was alone, and the house was completely dark. No porch light or any light coming from the windows. I turned to my friend and boyfriend and asked if they had seen that. I guess they mean the girl. And I exclaimed how creepy that was. They agreed, but didn't have too much else to say. Naturally, I thought whomever lived there was just trying to scare whoever drove by looking like a stereotypical ghost girl. But what made me so uneasy was the idea that she would have just been standing out there alone for who knows how long, all in the hopes that someone might drive by. Keep in mind, this was the middle of the night, and we hadn't passed a single other car the whole trip up to the cliff. It just wasn't sitting right with me. We continue on and make it to the cliff and enjoy a moonlit mini hike and enjoyed the view over this sleepy town. Without any other incidents, I might add. A few years down the line, my friend and I are having spooky discussions, and I brought up that night. I asked her if she remembered that night and how creepy that was. She said she told me she had a confession to make. She said, "You've brought that night up a few times since then. And I have to be honest, I never actually saw anyone standing there. None of us did. We actually thought you were trying to scare us, so we played along." She went on to tell me that she does remember the house in question, and she does remember the mailbox and all of that, but that there was never a person standing next to the road beside that mailbox. And everyone else in the car, they hadn't seen her either. They all thought I was full of it and just trying to scare everyone. What the heck did I see? I remember so many details of what she looked like, almost in a frame-by-frame sequence. I remember the uneasy feeling I got as soon as I saw her, and how it felt like she was staring directly at me. At the time, I thought she was just staring at all of us. But maybe she was, in fact, only staring at me. My friend has since told me this story. Thoroughly creeps her out now, knowing that I was dead serious about seeing her, the girl. and I definitely wasn't messing around. And I'm also very, way more creeped out, sorry, knowing I'm the only one who saw her. I just don't know what to think of it. And that's the end of the story.
Well, that was very creepy. And the whole time listening, I was just like, what are they? I'm wondering, what are they gonna, what's gonna happen? Because anything could happen in a scenario like that. I mean, you're just kind of, but so at first you kind of think maybe it's a person that was inside the house and maybe even by a paranormal means is motivated to go outside for some reason to, as like a watch of some type. And I thought something else was going to happen. But in the way that this is looking, it's as if somehow that girl knew the ghost girl, I'm assuming, knew that they were going to be coming there, or she was aware or heard it, or she always does stand there. But because that's wonderful, that's very weird to wonder about too. Is she always standing there at that spot, or does she move around in that area right there and just happen to be standing in that spot? But then on the other hand, the fact that she might have been aware that they were fixing to be passing by is even more scary in a way. Well, not scary, but eerie. And then to have made eye contact with the individual telling the story, and then later to find out that no one else had seen it, seeming that the spirit somehow saw or knew. That's what's weird too. I mean, knew somehow that the viewer, and the storyteller was seeing her, seeing the ghost. So I think that's very weird. And then nothing else happened. So it's not as if it followed, as far as we can tell, it didn't follow them up to the cliff to continue to interact in some way, but just stayed there with that house, but was standing out in the dark like that. It's very sad, and I wonder what the circumstances could be about that location. And then you have a young girl too out in the woods, so there's no telling really what the background could be on that. But as if she's just living, maybe haunting that house that she was in front of, and was somehow, especially since it was young kids themselves, like not young kids, but teenagers going by, and she herself was of that same age group. It's kind of sad, really, to think that she might, depending, or because I'm assuming to take on that kind of detail with the sundress and the color of the hair and the cut and everything, that below the shoulders, that that I don't think it was a projection of a spirit wanting to look that way per se, unless it was. There's always that possibility too, I suppose. But very eerie, for sure. Not something you'd really want to. Well, then maybe not everybody. I mean, I might not mind seeing something like that, but at the same time, it'd be very confusing because you'd be wondering if it. Well, I don't know. So strange, very strange.
Yeah, and then to find out after that it wasn't just a regular living person standing there, because
Mm-hmm.
no one else saw them, and yeah, that was also odd. I sort of, in a way, think those kind of stories where, as far as the storyteller knows, it could have been, or knew at the time, it could have
Yeah.
been just a regular person. And then, of course, they don't find out until way after. Oh, no one else saw them. No one else
Right.
noticed
So
at
you guys
all.
just pretended because you thought I was pulling your leg. That's crazy, you know, or just being
Yeah.
creepy. Oh, very strange. And there seems like there's a whole lot more to whatever that, you know, maybe going out at that cliff area. Ooh, creepy to think too that it's a cliff face near location, and you have young people planning to go to the cliff edge, and then this girl is standing, down way road from, watching them go up there. I wonder if there's any correlation to that, possibly. Also, there's no way to know. You'd have to go through like newspapers and things like that and see if there's anything to that. But or she lived out, or was haunting, or had lived out in the house that was she was standing in front of. But oh, that's creepy. You can kind
Yeah.
of just sit in your mind, the headlights, and then you see the girl there. Very spooky, and it's almost kind of sad because of the desolation, that how, out in the middle of nowhere like that, and there she is, out in the middle of nowhere like that by herself. That's very, as a spirit even, kind of
Right.
sad. Yeah.
Yeah, you always hope that maybe it's not quite as maybe to them the world doesn't look quite as or isn't quite as abandoned or lonely. Maybe there's others there that they're with, or at least they can go places if they want to.
Yeah.
They're not
Or
stuck there
perhaps
the
it
whole
was
time.
just, a weird interactive memory or something. I don't know. It doesn't make any, it's hard to say because she makes eye contact, I guess, or at least the storyteller believes that she was, or he or she was making eye contact with them as they went by her. I don't
Yeah.
know. Very weird.
Yep.
Hmm.
Well, I have one more story here, so I'll read this and then we'll go from there. This one says, "This happened years ago when my sister and I lived in an old house. This house had a foyer. I always forget that word. When you come in, the front door, and a bedroom to the left, and another bedroom to the right. Past the bedroom to the right was the bathroom, and past the bedroom to the left was another bedroom, which was my bedroom. The bedroom to the right was my sister's bedroom. One night, my sister had invited our little cousin, who was about 6 years old, to spend the night with us. Her room had an old gas heater that she used often to heat her room. Since it was old, turning it off and on again was something that only adults who were familiar with it would do. For example, the kids knew not to touch the heater, nor would they know how to work it if they did. They tried. The same thing goes for her bedroom door lock. When she slept, she would always lock her door from the inside using the original door lock that came with the house. The old kind that had a little switch that you would have to find and click to lock it. On this particular night, my sister and my little cousin were sleeping in her room, with her door locked from inside, and that old heater was on. The way her room was set up was her bed was all the way to the far right wall. Then she had put a mattress on the floor for my cousin, which was in between the door and her bed. We all went to bed, and myself, I slept with my door open. About 2 o'clock, I woke up and went to the restroom across the hall and passed my sister's room. When I passed her room, I noticed her door was still closed. Then I left the bathroom and got back into my bed. Just a minute later, I hear someone open my sister's door. I assumed it was my sister because I know it wasn't me, so I didn't think anything about it. And I went back to sleep and didn't hear anything of note after that. Sometimes when it gets hot in her room from the heater, she would open the door and leave it open to get some air, which is exactly what I assumed she did that night. The next morning, when everyone got up, my sister asked me, "How did you get my door unlocked last night when you opened it?" I told her then I didn't open her door last night. She did. I heard her open it. She told me she hadn't opened it, but just woke up to her door open and her heater off. So she had asked our little cousin how he figured out how to unlock the door and turn the heater off. And he told her that myself had done it because he was awake when it happened. And he knew it wasn't my sister because she would have had to step noticeably on his mattress to get to the door to open it. He said he woke up when the door opened, but just figured it was me and went back to sleep. So it wasn't me or my sister or my little cousin who unlocked and opened the door and turned off the heater. So who was it? We were the only ones in the house, and I slept with my door open, and I hadn't heard any footsteps or seen anyone else. Since it was an old house, you could hear every footstep that was made. We still don't know how it happened, but figured maybe someone or something was protecting them from overheating, or maybe carbon monoxide, since that was before we knew about the dangers of gas heaters. I'm not sure, but it was unexplainable to us. And that's the end of the story.
Well, thank goodness, maybe. You know, actually, as you were telling that story, I was like, ooh, that all sounds like a bad mix. You have an old, gas heater, and I've had gas heaters like that before too, but a lot of people have. And they are kind of wonky, and you have to be they're tricky, and you could have, carbon monoxide and all kinds of things, and then the idea, or even a fire or anything like that. And then you have the door, locked from the inside, which just sounds with a weird little switch thing, so it'd be kind of hard to get to them should there have been an accident or something like that. But then the carbon monoxide aspect of it, they wouldn't even know. And of course, I'm sure it was winter, so the window wasn't open, so you wouldn't have ventilation. Then with the two people in the room using up I don't know, it makes me think that a spirit that always possibly like the house spirit, so to speak, there's always that possibility that there's, that every house has a spirit of some type that kind of resides over the property. So it could be that it did open the door, to protect them from either, like they're saying, a fire or carbon monoxide or anything to that effect. So I don't know. I really do think because otherwise the sleepwalking thing would be very hard too, since they weren't familiar with handling the heater, and then the door lock itself would be difficult to maneuver in the middle of the night. So even sleepwalking doesn't really make any sense. So it only leaves really that kind of doesn't only leave, but it's one very seems likely that there was a spirit, like a guardian spirit of some type, or like I say, the spirit of the house keeping an eye on things. So I think that's a good turnout. My goodness.
Yeah, I when I first read that, I was because I've had family that have had um, heaters like that, like even just electric space heaters. I've never liked those things either because they're just there's heat and then you have the cord that's plugged in, and I
Hmm.
just never liked that combination of having something that's plugged in that has electricity that's making heat. That
Yeah,
and so I can't imagine having a gas heater inside that. My gosh.
in the
Um,
bedroom.
yeah,
Yeah, that's strange. I
yeah.
wonder if there's one of those wall unit ones. They have those too in really old houses that are like. I remember at my grandpa's house, he had like a little space heater, not a space heater. It was literally built into the wall, and you could see little pretend flames behind a grate. And it was very small, probably 2 foot by 1 foot, and it was in his bathroom. And that was a gas heater. I wonder if it was like that, or one of those freestanding Good Morning stoves that you see in some of the old houses too. That's like a big box, basically, and that's all they have those type. But any kind could be extremely dangerous, especially with someone sleeping on the floor on a mattress with the blankets and sheets out and everything. I wonder if there was any kind of so maybe, yeah, I think it just sounded from the beginning of turning on a heater, locking a door from the inside, like, oh my gosh, you know. So I'm glad that you know it sounds like there could have been something that could have gone wrong. So thank goodness, maybe, you know.
Yeah, however it happened, it's good that it happened. That
Yeah,
someone or something intervened. So, and I love those kind of stories where that
me too.
happens.
Yeah, where it's something being you know helpful. Or setting things up the way they, wouldn't otherwise go. So that's really neat, the intervention.
Yeah, definitely. Yep. I thought that was a good way to end the show. So,
Definitely. This was a lot of cool stories. I really, really enjoyed listening to them.
oh, good. I'm glad. I was glad when I found them. I found the shorter ones right away. So normally these days I'm only doing like 3 stories per show, but tonight since I found so many right away and there was a few short ones, I was able to get them all in there. So that was nice. Um,
Um,
but yeah, thank you again, Jen, for being here with me. Jen has her own YouTube and TikTok channels, and I will include the links to those in the episode description. So thank you
Thank
for
you.
being here.
Yeah, I had a great time, and thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it, and I hope you did too. And
Okay.
I'll let you. I'll pop up here. You have a great
Okay.
night.
You as
Thank you.
well. So yeah, this was a lot of fun, and so like I said, tomorrow I'll be covering paranormal news. Wow, we went for an hour tonight. That's amazing. Um, just noticed that. So and then we'll go from there. So thank you all for listening, and I will talk to you all tomorrow night on the next episode of Salcedo Paranormal. Take care.